Something happened at my granddaughter's school in 2020. The real reason for Marcus Lamb's demise has been shrouded in mystery for a long time. At long last, a previously undisclosed diary has come to light. We were wrong about everything we believed about, was aware. A previously unknown aspect of their story, dark details, frightening intentions, and Joni Lamb's intimate thoughts, were exposed. Did it feel like loss or something far more unsettling? No, this is more than that. This is shocking news. The Christian world could be rocked to its foundations by what comes next. It all began with what appeared to be a tragic event. The Christian community was rocked by the unexpected and devastating loss. Dire Television Network's fearless and magnetic CEO, Marcus Lamb, died on November 20, 2021. Officially, COVID-19 problems were the reason. He had been a vocal opponent of vaccination requirements and lockdowns. Many saw the tragic irony in his rapid death after contracting the virus. Although everyone was engrossed with the funeral, individuals that view, follow, and are friends or family with. However, when things started to calm down, subtle uncertainties began to emerge. Those who had been close to Marcus started to sense that something was off. Time was of the essence. Not all people could make sense of what transpired. Some went so far as to ask the unimaginable. Surely this was a medical emergency. Is it possible that there is more to Marcus's death than what was initially believed? Internet strangers weren't the originators of such rumors. They started with individuals who were familiar with the Lamb family, had close working relationships with Marcus, or had noticed something that didn't add up. Feeling uneasy was all it was at first. Suspicion set in after that. Marcus Lamb, the contentious chief executive officer of a Christian television network, has passed away in Texas. Subsequent to his conflict with COVID-19, the conservative televangelist gained notoriety last year when his dire network airtime was devoted to anti-vaccination and anti-lockdown organizations and individuals. Almost immediately following Marcus's death, his long-standing ministry partner and wife Joni Lamb came into the limelight. Passing, she thanked her supporters for praying for her and did interviews in which she spoke about her loss. However, something strange began to be noticed by others before long. The rate at which things were progressing. In the weeks following Marcus's passing, Joni seemed to grow closer to Doug. Our counselor, Weiss, comes from a complicated family tree. Speculation swirled around them as their relationship deepened. Had their relationship been closer before Marcus passed away? Were they truly being drawn closer by this sorrow? Or if there had been an incident during the entire time? Things got heated for people inside the dire network. Employees and relatives on the inside started to notice changes, including a quickening of decision-making processes. Some people's opinions are being ignored while Joni assumes a greater role than before. It went beyond her loss alone. Not now. It was starting to be asked, and someone knew, whether Marcus's death had paved the way for something. Just 2 months after Marcus passed away, Doug Weiss filed for a divorce, amplifying the rumors. Things seemed to be coming into place at the last minute, but the timing was off. Placed somewhat too effortlessly. A few people started to think that Marcus's death was more than merely a turning point. The action may have been premeditated and set in motion a series of domino effects. How much longer was Marcus unwell than they admitted? Were choices taken after not discussed closed doors? No one from the outside was pushing these conspiracy beliefs. The Lamb Circle was the source of these inquiries. Those who had loved Marcus in the past, but were disgusted by his current behavior. In the midst of it all, the greatest anguish of all time. Was Joni concealing any information? I was caring for Marcus at the hospital on his last night there when, at about 3 in the morning, She told me that all she did was stare at me in the dark. Serving is where I am. I texted my mom and told her, I can't do this anymore. You feel the pain of my heart. Me and my child are ruining this family. You should know. Then she looked at me and said, Look what you have done to this family. You're looking out for me. You'll find a way to free me. I knew that that was my last night. A day later, he passes away. The idea was met with skepticism. Initially, no. However, additional information emerged. It became harder to ignore as the relationship progressed, Dyer's leadership changed, and control over the narrative tightened. Something far more complex was emerging from what had begun as a tragic death. Those who had previously put their faith in Joni and the ministry were now starting to question her motives. Faith. People began to wonder things shortly after Marcus Lamb passed away. There was a lot of mourning at the outset. During his time in Christian radio, the man had a strong voice. Someone who leads spiritually and has a huge following. Those closest to him were the hardest hit by his unexpected death. Something changed, though, as the weeks progressed. Sighs became more audible. Some began to take note of Joni Lamb's, Marcus's widow, peculiar behavior, acted upon. Missing was just the beginning. She was advancing rapidly. It is Doug Wise's turn. A prominent Christian counselor, Doug had made a life for himself by assisting those in recovery from addiction, broken relationships, and other similar issues. Faith. He gave off the impression of being a decent guy, cool, knowledgeable, and spiritually solid. So, when Joni began hanging out with Doug following Marcus's passing, many assumed it was merely a friendship. Perhaps he was easing her grief, directing her through her suffering, and providing solace amidst the mayhem. It was never that easy, though. Their relationship's tone started to shift very fast. No longer were they merely two individuals leaning on each other in their time of need. At situations where they were both present, their conversational style seemed overly intimate and personal. Something about the social media posts, the grins, and the body language raised eyebrows. The rumors began to circulate before anyone could have a good grasp on the situation. Friendship was more than what Joni and Doug had. Their status was something supplementary. The fact that Joni had finally found solace in another person was shocking, but that wasn't all. That all transpired so rapidly. After more than 30 years of marriage, Doug filed for a divorce from his wife, Marcus, just 2 months after he left. The time frame began to feel suspicious. The pieces began to fit together for people. How fast can a man seek a new wife after being married for decades? After losing her spouse, how could Joni be so quick to jump into a new relationship? There was no logic behind it. At least not in the eyes of those who were observing intently. In the afternoon, I dropped by Dyer to pick up a snack from the cafe. I was worried about taking my fearful little girl to the green room since there was something there. At home, we had a babysitter. I needed to grab something fast, though, on this particular occasion. It is mid-afternoon when I go in there. I was surprised that the green room was so crowded. I brought her along, and it was a nightmare. He walked in with his feet, and my child and his wife were filled with fear. I went to get the food box. She drooped so low that she slammed her body against the table. I seized her small form. I recall rushing to get into the car after picking her up and recounting the incident to my other relatives. A few people I had faith in, and it was terrifying. I am not bringing my child here, I thought to myself. And it wasn't simply rumors about idols. These were the opinions of those who had known the Lamb family for quite some time. Insiders, co-workers, acquaintances, and even Joni's own progeny. Marcus and Joni's offspring, Jonathan and Susie Lamb, started to voice their concerns in a public forum. The family members expressed their unease with Joni's decisions, the rapid pace of events, and the sense that their family's traditional values were being superseded. They saw timing as more than simply a factor. Questions of loyalty, trust, and whether Joni was genuinely grieving or already plotting her next move were at the heart of the matter. The public reaction from Joni only served to further perplex matters. Reluctantly beyond the whispers. Actually, she stood up for herself. According to her, she and her family had been greatly blessed by Doug. They had prayed for one another, supported one another, and discovered love amidst their suffering. She described how God had brought them together. They were in a pure, holy, and spiritually grounded relationship, she said, and there was nothing wrong with it. Words are cheap, but deeds have more impact, so those statements failed to convince many. I mean, they did show me stuff, emails, texts, and the like, and more documentation for which I expressly stated, "All right, now I'm going to have to go back and talk to Jonathan and Susie. I intend to do so this morning in order to hear their perspective. What I will not do, though, is to engage in endless circling. It was in front of my eyes. I listened to opposing arguments. As I was conversing with Jonathan and Susie, I had some spiritual phenomena. Visiting Dyer undoubtedly evoked a range of emotions in me. This interview will be posted by me this very day." Hey, I'm going to post the interview because that's the fair thing, the right thing. People can feel whatever they want to feel about it. I'll then do a third and final video where I share, after letting everyone shred it, criticize it, and critique it. Indeed, I saw what they indicated. I had to go talk to Jonathan and Susie because they showed me some stuff, and then I needed to hear their reactions to what they showed me. I started talking to them about it, and now I'm going to make the final video and hide from it. As a counselor, Doug Weiss was more than that. He has been through hard times before and knew how to get back on his feet. Someone who ought to have understood that getting over a loss isn't a sprint, but rather a gradual process. Still, he was assuming the responsibilities of a partner, a guardian, and even possible life partner. Feeling cheated by Joni and the entire image they had once believed in, people started to feel better before Marcus' memories had even started to settle. Time to meet Dyer. The foundation of this ministry was to be a strong sense of religion, family, and trust. Plus, things were beginning to appear like a scripted drama, like a well-thought-out strategy. Some wondered if Doug and Joni had been close before Marcus passed away, if there were hidden feelings between them, and if Doug was already there as Marcus fought CO. Those were some weighty inquiries. Joni, meanwhile, did little to ease the storm. She frequently shifted the conversation away from directly addressing the rumors. Love, healing, and letting God decide were themes she frequently posted about. She created artwork by hand, accused others of trying to discredit her by implying that they didn't comprehend the nature of grief. But now, it wasn't only strangers who were interrogating her. They were members of her own family, employees she had known and loved for many years. Not merely the rumors were the most excruciating aspect of this whole ordeal. It was the schism it sowed. Discord arose throughout the Lamb family. You could see that Jonathan and Susie were devastated. They were losing more than simply a parent. Additionally, they were grieving the loss of their mother. Who was that woman standing so assuredly by Doug Weiss? They didn't know her. How Joni could get over it so quickly, and why she got defensive when they voiced their worries baffled them. Their enthusiasm in art and film was too noble of a motivator. Dr. Doug Weiss has been an incredible benefit to my family, Dyer included, and to me, but his disappointment in not getting his way only grew when I wed him. As a mother and grandma, I can tell you that the circumstance breaks my heart and brings me great sorrow since I love my family. I adore each and every one of my offspring. I adore my grandkids. Our many years of collaboration have been rewarding. Furthermore, I was hoping that we could have discussed and handled this matter privately. Now, though, Jonathan has left me with no option but to speak up. It is well known that we have committed our life to sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ. It breaks my heart to watch my son Jonathan and his wife tackle it. Please know that the rumors that have been going around about my late husband and myself are totally unfounded. They weren't alone either. Those who backed Dyer started to wonder what was actually going on behind the scenes. Contributions diminished. People stopped watching. Whoever had been a weekly viewer before now watched with skepticism. They questioned whether the network's focus had shifted from disseminating God's word to shielding one's own interests. The announcement of Joni and Doug's engagement brought everything to a peak. It was the deciding factor for some. It had just been 12 months since Marcus's passing, yet she was already making plans to tie the knot once again. We felt hurried. To me, it was very rude. It validated the darkest suspicions of many. That love had absolutely no role in this. The topic at hand was the management of power. Following in Marcus's footsteps, Joni said that she was only listening to her intuition and that God had guided her to Doug. That she merited a second go at love after experiencing such anguish. Her detractors, however, remained unconvinced. They couldn't let go of the rhythm, the velocity, and the lack of dialogue surrounding crucial inquiries. That is correct. Also, I'd want to mention that, given the profoundly horrific nature of what we have experienced, sitting here, obviously, we can never adequately convey the experiences of the preceding few years. The process of what that looked like is something I'd rather not go into, but it was unbearably agonizing. Yes, there is freedom in not being reliant on a small group of people, in not having your requests for justice diminished or rejected, and in not reaching any kind of resolution whatsoever. With the story's release and the positive reception it garnered, I finally felt at peace and fulfilled. As soon as our parents' feelings were acknowledged, a torrent of justice washed over us. We were actually considering doing a short film. We would prefer not to go into detail about our backstory at this time. My friend Jonathan and I snatched the camera and sat down to answer some questions. The fact that Joni and Doug became too close too quickly wasn't the only factor in the end. It centered on the implications of that intimacy, including a change in priorities, a loss of faith, and an increasing dread that the leaders of the largest Christian network on earth might not be as honest and trustworthy as they appeared. The inquiries persist. The incisions are still open. The impact is still felt by individuals who held Joni in high esteem, as an example of courage and loyalty. So what's the plan? It will be revealed in due course. Unfortunately, it's too late. In addition to being a love story, Joni and Doug's story has taken on other dimensions. It has come to represent all that many find repugnant about contemporary Christian leadership. The plot became considerably more sinister when the whispers began to shift from a simple discussion of relationships and loss to something much more unsettling. The granddaughter of the Lamb family is the subject of the accusations. A sorrowful tale of a widow who moves on too soon after her spouse dies. All of a sudden devolved into a tumultuous, emotionally devastating story of hidden truths, severe anguish inside the family, and the inability to confront the aftermath. We're going to dive into the deep and nasty in upcoming podcasts with some incredible guests. After we told the journalist, and a few of other journalists, our tale, they are completely free to do with our gifts as they choose. A lack of control is upon us. The truth was spoken. The investigation is done by them. It takes a long time. Time is of the essence. So, this has been going on for some time. Things have been heating up. Their diligence is commendable, and I applaud them for it. By the way, I didn't anticipate how much of a bomb this video would be when I proposed we do it. Jonathan, well, got a notion. I didn't mean to. It seemed unfair not to address a few questions that our adoring fans have been dying to know since we've been on TV so often and everyone has been so sweet to us. Alright then, out of all the frequently asked questions that have come up recently, why did we wait so long to speak, and why didn't we call the police? Second, why didn't I grab hold of this guy? Also, I don't understand why Susie shouted for me to climb instead of just doing it herself. Finally, number 4, we should go public. Yeah, it began subtly, barely noticeable amidst the larger drama. The small daughter of Marcus and Joni started acting strangely, and this was noticed by her son and daughter-in-law, Jonathan and Susie Lamb. She began to exhibit obvious symptoms that something was wrong when she would freeze up around specific persons and behave anxious even in familiar settings. It appeared at first that maybe she was merely experiencing a bad patch. However, in the midst of a summertime family vacation in, something she said in 2020 rocked their world to its foundations. Some things no child should ever see were visible to her. That was the turning point. The news shocked Jonathan and Susie. Their minds were blank. A father and his daughter were already familiar with it. Someone had faith in the world of the daystar, he belonged. A person who was familiar with the family and their mission. In order to digest it, they attempted to remain cool, but they realized they were on the brink of something terrible. To something massive. Something that might bring down the whole ministry in addition to their family. Attempting to be heard, and then being disregarded began a lengthy and difficult process. Now, we will analyze the first question. Who said we shouldn't have called the cops? Actually, we went to the police twice. Regarding your second inquiry, I'd like to know why you were so hesitant to start talking. Given the complexity of the topic, I can see why there would be some back and forth in an essay. Thus, I propose we review the timeline. Therefore, we will simply streamline your process. Since this is going to be a brief video, we will do a very condensed version. The truth will eventually out. For the most important points, we have included some notes here. Then, where did we leave off? Where the story started. To begin, in the summer of 2020, more accurately, in the early spring of 2020, my sister saw that my daughter was acting strangely, like stiffening up whenever others got close. I also observed this, but I guess I didn't give it much thought. Embracing change, I reasoned. Asking about the person's height helped me estimate their age. Taller than Daddy. That made me feel threatened because he is a male. A kid of that age doesn't, not know to convey that. I understand. Increasing the speed. Following this, we proceed to the school, where our trusted confidant informed us that the teachers had informed us. There's no man here. It was as if they were saying, all right, it's over. Case closed. And I told Jonathan, I don't want to get talked out of this. I don't want to have a discussion with your family. Let's go to the police. So we did. Completed the report. Because of the lack of information, they conducted a brief investigation. The reality struck like a freight train when their daughter later disclosed, in graphic detail, that she had been abused. There was no miscommunication here. A child wasn't the only one involved in this. Afraid. It was genuine. Jonathan and Susie realized they needed to do something now. Accountability was made a priority by them. Answers were what they sought. However, they encountered opposition once more. This time, it's from within their own family as well as Dyer. Even though she was growing closer to Doug Weiss, Joni wasn't providing the necessary support. She spoke up for the individuals they were interrogating. Outside investigations were not allowed by her. Polygraphs were her go-to for establishing innocence rather than paving the way for actual justice. The treachery hit Jonathan and Susie hard. They felt increasingly alone the farther they dug. Claiming the claims were baseless, Joni went public with her defense. Despite her claims, her behavior betrayed her love for her children and grandkids. The accused had her support. Above all else, she was uninterested in listening, and she flat out refused to step aside. Susie went on to say how when the accused abuser was unexpectedly brought into the room with the daughter, her body became slack with terror. Fear paralyzed the child, and he or she fell face down under a table. Something was off. This was real. That was trauma. However, when they informed other relatives about this, some of them believed them while others didn't. The public's demands only served to exacerbate the problem. Susie and Jonathan had to decide whether to discreetly protect their daughter or making it all public and taking a chance on additional suffering. They decided to speak up not for publicity or vengeance, but because they saw no other way out. They weren't merely attempting to shield their child from harm.